What's up YouTube, I'm Guy, and today we're talking Seiko. Why do I hate Seiko? That's a question that I've been asked a lot lately. I've gotten it in video comments and I've gotten it in messages. Dozens of times perhaps in the last year. Look, I get it. I've been critical of the brand as of late. I'm not super happy with the direction that Seiko has gone in the past few years. They were once, I think, a beloved enthusiast's brand, and I think they've lost their way. But I do not hate Seiko. Of all the watches that I've bought and sold, there's one watch that I miss having in my collection. One watch that I sometimes regret having sold. The watch we're talking about today, the Seiko SARB033. From a design standpoint, I think it's almost perfect. And while I don't own this watch any longer, I am fortunate enough to have friends and viewers willing to loan me their watches. So a big thanks to Bob for letting me borrow this watch for a bit and get reacquainted with it. Now let's be fair, Seiko absolutely nailed it on the size and scale of this watch. At 38mm in diameter with a wingspan of 45mm lug to lug, this watch sits on my 6 3/4 inch wrist perfectly. The overall fit and finish of the case is very nice. Maybe not the best out there, but it punches well above its weight class. The dial and handset presentation is almost perfect. The thin, high-polished bezel that frames the face of the watch is proportioned just right, and we get a quality sapphire crystal to boot. Things do fall a little short on the bracelet and clasp, but it is serviceable and the finish is good. But this watch does have a fatal flaw, and that's the movement. Now we're going to talk about the movement. We're going to talk about it a lot, but first let's talk about Seiko, the brand as a whole, and why I've fallen out of love with them. Like I said, I feel like they've lost their way. Seiko is no longer the brand a new watch enthusiast should look to for watches that are both affordable and high quality. 3 years ago, that's exactly what Seiko was, but these days they're becoming a much different animal. First, Seiko watches are still roughly the same quality, maybe even better in some cases, but their quality control is still abysmal. I don't know, but I'm sure I'm not exaggerating when I say I bet there's a 50-50 chance when you buy a new Seiko that there will be something wrong with it. We all know about the legendary misaligned chapter rings and bezels on their dive watches after all. Next, the prices of their watches keep escalating. Seiko continues to retire older fan favorite models like the SARB033, and they release new models that generally offer little in terms of improvement but with higher prices. The value proposition of this brand has very much started to dwindle. On top of that, Seiko has gone all in on the limited edition game. It's a tactic that they use to capitalize on the consumer's fear of missing out mentality, and it drives them to pay a higher premium for watches with the promise of exclusivity. Look, I know some people are a fan of this sort of thing, but personally, I'm not. I think you should just make good watches, make them available to everyone that wants to buy them, and have the occasional limited edition release for special things, like to commemorate an event. So I've discussed all this in the past, in multiple videos. I won't beat the dead horse any longer, but suffice to say, there's a lot of reasons why I'm no longer in love with the brand. And it's a shame because they do make some very cool watches. Case in point, the Seiko SARB033, the only watch I really have any regrets about ever having sold. Now I know they no longer produce this watch, it was discontinued a while ago, but they are still available to purchase readily. However, I will probably never purchase another Seiko watch, and it's because of the movement. It's important to note that I am very much a fan of accurate watches. Accurate mechanical watches. When a mechanical watch keeps good time, within reason, that gets me excited. So there's going to be plenty of clever Dans out there, and they're going to say, well, if you want an accurate watch, buy a quartz watch. Look, I have quartz watches. I appreciate what they can do. And mechanical watches cannot top them in terms of accuracy. But that argument is a weak attempt at defending an indefensible position. Mechanical watches can be accurate in their own right. Now, if you don't care about a reasonable rate of daily deviation in the timekeeping of your watches, hey, good for you. Plus or minus 30, 45, or even 60 seconds a day is acceptable for some people. And look, I don't begrudge anyone that feels that way. But for a lot of guys, having a finely tuned timepiece that runs at a rate within a few seconds per day is an aspect of this hobby, and that's one that they enjoy. So, what's wrong with Seiko movements? Well, in my experience, they are rather poor and very inconsistent timekeepers. They generally have a wide specification range for accuracy to begin with, and quite often they fall well outside of the specification. The 6R15 and this SARB033 has a specification of -15 to +25 seconds per day. The lower end movements from the 7S and 4R ranges have even wider specs, and I have seen time and time again these watches run even worse than their advertised accuracy. Let's take a look at this SARB033 on my Timegrapher, but before we do, let's make some things clear. A Timegrapher tells you the rate a watch keeps in one of 6 individual positions. Usually a watch keeps a different rate in any one position than it would in another orientation. A Timegrapher does not predict what kind of accuracy you'll get on the wrist, but it does give us some ideas of what to expect. Now there's a bunch of information on the screen of this Timegrapher, but the important piece we'll be looking at is the rate. You can see the watch sitting on the microphone cradle in the dial-up position running on our machine here. You're probably saying to yourself, well, that's a pretty good rate. It does flutter a little between +1 and +2 seconds per day, but overall that's excellent. Now here's the problem. Putting the watch into another orientation shows a huge deviation. In the crown up position, the rate drops down to as low as -40 seconds per day. In the other 4 positions, we also see a large discrepancy in the average rate, with ranges at -20 to -30 in some positions and -5 to -10 in others. Now, I can't even predict what kind of accuracy this watch would keep on the wrist. It's going to be heavily affected by your personal activity. If your arms tend to be down at your side a lot, or if your wrists are in a position that has the watch facing dial up because maybe you type on a keyboard all day long, there's probably going to be a drastically different rate of accuracy that your watch is keeping while you wear it. The position you rest the watch in overnight will also drastically affect its overall daily average. Now, if you're lucky, it'll average itself out to a reasonably acceptable rate while you wear it. But it's going to require a little bit of luck. Without tighter tolerances, there's really no telling what the real-world results will be. By comparison, I put my Hamilton Khaki Field Automatic on the Timegrapher, and I tested it in all 6 positions. Its fastest rate was just +6, and its slowest rate was only -5. The Hamilton uses an H10 movement, a slightly modified Swiss ETA 2824, a movement that is in the same class as the 6R15, yet it's an infinitely better timekeeper. This has been the type of experience that I've had across the board with most of the Seiko watches I've owned and borrowed for review. The reason this is such a problem is that if you want to have it adjusted to be more accurate, which is something a watchmaker can do in theory, it's very difficult with this big of a deviation in each of the positions. A watch like the Hamilton, on the other hand, would be easy to dial into a different daily average rate because of the much tighter range. But for the Seiko, it's kind of like shooting darts with your eyes closed. And this isn't the worst problem with Seiko movements, this is just the norm. The worst problem is that I routinely see watches that drift horribly in any given position. By that I mean, for example, I've had Seiko movements that in one position, such as dial up for example, will keep time at a rate of +10 seconds, then suddenly start running at +30, and then drift back down to some rate in the middle, continuously swinging all over. A watch like that wouldn't be a challenge to regulate, it would be downright impossible. For a collector like me, who's an enthusiast of timepieces that keep consistent and reasonably accurate time, this is just unacceptable. And until Seiko updates and refines their movements, I won't buy them anymore. That said, there is still a lot I love about the SARB033. I hope Seiko brings it back in a newer and even better model, since it's been discontinued. I'd love to see this watch come back to market with all of the great design aspects unchanged, but maybe with a nicer movement and an upgraded bracelet and clasp. If they did that, they'd win me back as a customer immediately. Unfortunately, the odds are they would also make it a limited edition watch with a price premium to match, but we can't win them all, can we? So, there are the 2 big reasons why I'm no longer in love with the Seiko brand. I've had a lot of issues with their movements, and I have lost a lot of respect for the brand and the direction that they've been taking the company over the last several years. Let me be clear, I do think that they make some really cool watches, and I can even stomach the hit or miss quality control issues, but at least for now, they're off my list of brands that I'm looking at when I want to add a watch to my collection. Grand Seiko, on the other hand, is another story entirely. There's a fair chance one of those watches might find its way into my watch box in the future. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, please check the description of this video for a list of ways that you can help and support me and my channel. Please like and share this video, and also subscribe to the channel. Check me out on my social media accounts, and consider supporting me on Patreon. Big thanks to everyone that has been. Also, don't forget about my Amazon affiliate link if you're thinking about buying something I've reviewed, or anything else for that matter. Click my Amazon link first, and I earn a small commission with each and every transaction. And let me extend a big thanks to everyone that has been helping and supporting me over the years. I really appreciate it. Well, that's going to wrap this one up for today. So until the next video, I'll sign off and say bye now.